confrontation. Yeah.
Later on in the programme, a record from that rarest of all things, the multiracial band from South Africa. By actually existing together as a band and living under the same roof, they're breaking the law.
My name is Mirissa Neff, and I am the director of This Is National Wake. I first found out about National Wake through another documentary film called Punk in Africa, and they are kind of featured along with many other bands that were within the idiom of punk in Southern Africa. But the music of National Wake blew me away. Their story, the visuals, the Super 8 footage that existed of the band that was shot by the film's co-producer, Nadine Katie, as well as Robin Muir, just left me like dumbfounded. One, I didn't know that scene existed in South Africa, but it was just mind-blowing to me that it could exist. Being a child of the 80s and someone who grew up with this very unnuanced knowledge of what was happening in South Africa at that time. You know, I was aware that there were boycotts. I was aware that what was going on in South Africa was really terrible, that apartheid was bad. But in that formation, in my brain, it kind of meant that Black people and white people were completely separate and not allowed to intermingle whatsoever. And then to see this band with Black and white members on stage rocking out to their Black and white fans, dancing together, flirting together, all of that was just, turned my notions upside down.
Locals in the street, it's from nowhere up to go home. What for locals get ahead? I'm far from peace to rule. Who wants peace now? Who wants war? Let me tell you something. I crave for your sexy body.
While we were dancing, there was no apartheid.
When I started working on the project and was in touch with Ivan, who's the sole surviving founder of the band, and Nadine, I think that about an hour of the footage had been digitized for use in Punk in Africa, but the rest of it was still on the Super 8 reels, which are like 3.5 minutes long. So I went to their house in LA and we actually went through it manually, cranking the Super 8 viewers and kind of rediscovering some of the footage along the way. It is a story about this band National Wake that existed in South Africa. They were from Johannesburg and Soweto. Soweto is the southwestern townships, and those townships were created to kind of excise the Black population from Johannesburg to some place that was far enough away that felt palatable to the white population, but close enough so that they would be available to work for the white population. And actually, two of the founders of National Wake, Gary and Punka Khoza, their family was forcibly moved from Alexandra, which is in the middle of Johannesburg, to Soweto. It's this very tragic history that so many Black South Africans experienced. What happened was Gary and Punka moved from Soweto to this house in Parktown, which was a white, neighborhood. Yeah, that was illegal, just by spending time together in a way that was not in a master-servant relationship. The film is about this coming together, this very serendipitous coming together of these members that shared passion, shared a musical passion, shared a vision, but they were in an environment where the regime was trying to keep them separate.
They were subversive. It was dangerous music.
We were outlaws, we were living outside of the law.
This is the wake of a nation. Yeah. This is National Wake. This is the wake of a nation. This is National Wake.
We did one gig where the owner threatened to shoot us if we went on.
It's also about the kind of tragedy that followed, them not being able to fulfill that dream because it was thwarted by the regime and by factors both outside the band and within the band. It was constant pressure, constant surveillance. They were being raided. Their house was being raided all the time. It's very hard to imagine how that would affect one and how one can kind of persevere and not feel like, okay, maybe this isn't worth it, and kind of keep the band going as long as they did and put out an incredible album. At the same time, there were other factors going on, like Gary had mental health issues that impacted him throughout his entire life. So it was a challenge for him to, I think, keep it together, both because of what he was dealing with his mental health, as well as I think that he was just a much more sensitive person as a result, and just the kind of inundation of, the fact that the government did not want that band to exist, sent the record label a notice that their album was undesirable and that they would go to gigs. There's one moment in the movie where Ivan talks about the fact that, the owner of the club wanted to shoot them when they went on stage. Like this was the kind of feedback that they were getting.
Children are crying, people are fighting, what does it cost me? Why can't we stop these unnecessary killings? Just it on me. Everybody wants
One of the huge challenges of making this film was the fact that Gary and Punka are deceased, and had, died years before I started working on the project. And it was really of vital importance to me to try to bring their voices to life as much as I could, given that huge handicap, really. So to that end, I did try to amplify the voices of Black folks that were a part of the story and close to them, as well as try my best to track down any archive of them that I could. And to that end, I connected with the folks that Punka collaborated with musically kind of closer to the end of his life in Ireland, and they were able to give me a tape of Punka being on the radio in Ireland. So we finally do hear Punka's voice outside of the music. And that, when I first heard that tape, it just, again, blew me away. It was just like, oh, finally I'm hearing him just talk and express himself and not have people speak for him or, try to interpret his voice through the music. And with Gary, we never actually hear his voice outside of the music, but we do. There is a segment of the film where he is playing piano, and this is in the months before he died, before he committed suicide. And that footage came from a wonderful filmmaker in South Africa whose name is Lungelo Mtambo, and he had intended to make a film just about Gary, actually. So he shot this footage of Gary, around his house, playing piano at a friend's house. So we don't hear Gary speak, but we do see him express himself in this beautiful way, in this kind of improvisational piano piece. And it's this very potent moment in the film. And yeah, that's my hope, is that people get a sense of his essence, like through that footage, even though we never actually hear him talk.
International news. International news. I feel it from ya. It goes inside me. I feel it from ya.
The takeaway that I take from National Wake is to, that they were trying to create something beautiful, to create beautiful art within a dystopia, really, within a dystopian historical moment. And I think that is something that we can all take something away from, and to attempt to, create the world that we want to see within, the very flawed world that we live in. So I think that is the big lesson that I would take from National Wake.
International yeah, yeah.